Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at an EVGA GTX690. I've got it on the bench rig by the side me already, but what I want to do is give you a good look at the card in the tent, kind of like, so it's all nice. We'll have a look at it back in the rig properly, swiftly after that, go into some benchmarks and a few games, and then we'll wrap up at the end, as we always do, with a good old-fashioned, I don't know why I've been doing so much of that stuff lately, but a good old-fashioned conclusion right at the end so that we can break down all of our thoughts and give you a proper good rundown on it. So I'm going to be quiet and we'll move on to give you a good look at the card. Right then peeps, time for an up-close look at the card. Now, first thing to note is there's only one SLI port, but that's because when there's two cores on the card, you can only run a maximum of two GTX 690s. Not as some people think you can run four. Anyone that thinks you can run four GTX 690s in a system is a retard. Anyway, right. So, two 8-pin slots. By the way, the retard thing was aimed at someone specifically. Anyway, right, so two 8-pin. There we go. You can see that up there. Let me turn my mono. There we go, I can see. Oh, look, it looks like I'm floating in no man's land. Da, da, da. Now, round the back, it's quite a busy back of the card, but also it's actually quite plain as well. There's no kind of like braces on the back, no memory chips, nothing. It's just kind of there's nothing really much to look at all. But on the business side, oh my, oh my, oh my, I really like the look of this. Now this, I've still not made my mind up whether it's really cold plastic or whether it is actually metal. I'm sure it's plastic. I really am sure it's plastic. But it really does look the part. I like it a lot. It just does look so nice. And obviously you've got this clear plastic window where you can see the heatsink underneath and the fins. And you've got that on both sides, so it's kind of symmetrical. The fan in the middle, the central fan design with the dual cards with Nvidias worked for quite a while. Nvidias have now got to the point after the 400 series where they're renowned for being quiet. So I hope that this carries on that way. You can see the fins at the end this side. And we've got a small port on the end this side. We've got 3 DVIs and a mini display port. It does support triple screens out the box. It does support 4 screens as well if you really, really want to go that far. This GeForce GTX lights up bright green, and at night it really does look mustard. But that's it. That's our look at the card on its own itself. But like I said, I'm properly impressed with the aesthetics of this. I would go as far as to say that's probably the best looking graphics card I have ever had the pleasure of getting my hands on. So it's now time for us to move on, and I will show you this running in a system. Right then peeps, quick look at the test rig. All the kit is hanging off a Asus Rampage 4 Extreme. We've got a 3960X at 4.6 GHz. Then we've got 16GB of Corsair Platinum memory, Corsair H100 cooler, Corsair fans, yada yada yada, Corsair AX1200 power supply. And a Corsair GS 240 gigabit Force 3 GS solid state drive. And people have said, you know what I mean, about me not using Noctuas anymore, and now I'm using the Corsair fans. And well, when I use Noctua fans before, everyone moaned about the colour. So now I'm using Corsair fans. People are moaning that I'm not using the Noctuas. They say I'm using too much Corsair stuff. Well, let's face it, I use it because I can and because I want to, not because I have to. And yeah, it all just kind of nestles in with each other. So if you don't like it, then don't watch the video. Really don't give a flying one. Anyway, but the main thing today, obviously, is the EVGA GTX690, which you've just seen previously. But yeah, that's what we're running with today. As far as the gameplay and stuff like that's concerned, it'll be 1920 by 1080. Everything will be turned up as much as I possibly can do. Other than that, I really should shush my mouth and we can move on and start looking at some of the benchmarks. Right then, so moving on to 3D Mark 11, we have on the left hand side the 690 and on the right hand side we have the 680 SLI. So on the left we have 14,067 for the single 690 and then we have 16,397 for the pair of 680s. So you can see there that's a fairly big jump for the 680s in SLI. So far though, that would be around where we would expect it to be, because the dual cards we would always expect to be better than the single card. But moving on, because I've got lots of screenshots for you, quite surprisingly, when you run 3D Mark 11 in X mode, it goes the opposite way around, and we have 5,715 for the 690 and then 4,722 for the 680 SLI. So there you're looking at about 1,000 points there really, that the 690 actually does manage to pull in front. Moving on swiftly again to 3D Mark Vantage. You can see that we've got 41,146 against 53,057, and then we've got 53,863 for the GPU score on the 690 against 55,539. Now a 2,000 point GPU score difference with Vantage is actually pretty damn good. One thing I will say though is, quite surprisingly, with the 690, you can see that the CPU score has plummeted, and I do mean plummeted. If you have a look here, compared to the CPU score on this, which is 46,700, which is quite. I would think, now I've looked, it must be PhysX offloading or something like that. But I think if we got if the CPU score was different, they would be roughly the same, and it must be a driver PhysX kind of thing with this one, because they're both running on the same version of Vantage. Literally, and it's on the same system, everything. So that is the only difference. So all I can think is that the newer 690 drivers are possibly offloading the PhysX to the CPU. Maybe it was a glitched run. I did run it a few times. So we'll leave this score as kind of one of those ones that we'll kind of leave for consideration later. But I do think that, you know, once that CPU score is fixed, maybe like I said, the PhysX is back on the graphics card where it should be, I reckon that they'll be pretty much exactly the same. So yeah, it's just a funny run there. If we move on, you can see we've got the CPU scores dipped again with this run. So it's obviously something that's kind of floating around with the drivers there maybe at the moment, or maybe even Vantage isn't utilising the graphics card properly on this one. It is up to date, but it could be down to the point that Vantage needs to be updated to run with the 690 better. So hopefully I'm kind of explaining the reasons why, because yeah, this is just kind of, it's just an indication that something's not 100% right here at the moment. We know the systems are right, we like the kit's all right, so it's more than likely going to be either a driver, or more often than not, this is more than likely just going to be an issue with Vantage itself. So there we got 32,681 versus 35,645, which with the CPU score again being so dramatically different, but the GPU score is the same, I would actually think that if we were to ramp that CPU score up, this one may actually pull in front. So yeah, so it's just a bit of a strange one there. I will keep my eyeballs peeled for a newer version of Vantage to pop up. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the camera, and then what I'm going to do is I am going to run Unigine, and I will bring you back when we've finished the Unigine run. Right then, so Unigine, this is literally just open Unigine, run it, benchmark it, nothing changed whatsoever. You can see the settings underneath. Frames per second, we got 79.3. Score, total score was 1996 or 1996. Wonder how many of you watching this were born in that year. Minimum frames per second was 45. Maximum frames per second was 181.6. Now, so we've done this It's now really time for me to stop benchmarking and for you to see my awfully bad gameplay. Beware people, you're in for a treat. Right then, my lovely people. Top of the screen is frames per second. Ignore the ridiculously highness of it at this present moment in time because we are on like a poor screen. Then we've got temperature here for the 2 cores. And then we've also got GPU usage, and then we've got fan speed. So the percentage on the very end up here, that's the fan speed. The percentage in the middle is the GPU usage, and then underneath we've obviously got the memory. So we'll crack on with some Crysis 2. I'm not very good. I don't pretend to be very good, but it doesn't matter because it's just to show you, you know, give you a rough idea on how it's going to perform. So we're going to resume game. I wanted to do it on the pause screen, and then when we get into the actual game itself, I'll run straight in and you can all laugh. I'm pretty sure at the point where we are, I've not got any ammo either, and I need to pretty much go straight in, find the ammo. I think I've got one stupid big rocket launcher grenade thing, but I'm useless at trying to aim that. Haha! Right. Let's find big rocket launcher thing. Hey, we got the alien straight away. But in my stupidity, there's not really a great deal left of him. There's his lovely metal frame. And not a lot of tissue. Although it is saying I can still pick the tissue sample up, but I'm not sure where it is. It must be splattered on walls and stuff. So we've not really had a chance to do much fighting and like jumping around and stuff. So frames per second, as you can see, just staying ridiculously high. But considering I killed the alien so soon, I suppose we should move on to you laughing at me driving instead. Right then, we move on to Dirt 3. I'm playing with the keyboard. You can see that the GPU usage is so low on this game. It really does not stress at all. I think you can probably hear me tapping the keys. Yeah, like 60% usage. It's really not a massive amount, is it? You can run this on a reasonable card. You can run this game triple screen easy. So with this card, it's really not difficult at all. +200 frames per second as well. Yeah, you don't really need to know much more. So rather than boring you, what I will do, because like I said, this isn't exactly the most stressful game in the world, or the most invigorating to watch, I would say it's probably time for me to stop the camera and we can go and play some Metro instead. So maybe I'll crash and then you can all laugh. Let's find a good place to crash. Need a good bank or something. Yeah, that one won't be bad. Alright, maybe not. Oh, down there. Yeah, we'll have that. Oh, no, okay. Right, time to go. Right then, my lovelies, on to Metro. As we can see, for Metro, that is a very, very healthy frames per second. 76.9, just going up to 79 then. I'm going to kneel up actually so I can see it better, because sitting down too low is giving me far too many shadows. So, just under 1300 megabyte of memory being used. Time to smack E. Can you hear me doing it? Don't make any difference how quickly you do it. I never have been able to keep that bloke from getting done. Yeah, no, see, he's gone now. Right, double barrel. Boom! As you can see, the GPU usage is quite healthily staying at 98 to 99%. Fan speed's kicked up. I'm not sure why the fan speed's registering different speeds, considering there's only one of them. But yeah, we'll ignore that. Maybe it's to do, I don't know, to do with temperatures. What it would be like. Have not a clue. One, two. Oh, mate, he's waking up. Yeah, it's time for the one you can never kill. Right, so this is the point where we always end the video. So, we got to the conclusion. So let's wrap all of what we've kind of learned and kind of seen up so far. So we'll start with the price to start off with. GTX 690s, it was the first kind of big graphics card that really pushed the limits of pricing, and I mean ridiculously pushed the limits of pricing, because although they're not exactly a mainstream card, they're not exactly special edition cards either. And the prices are upwards from about £800 in the UK. I have seen them over £900. Absolutely mental amounts of money. Yes, that's my phone going off. So they're an immense amount of money. But then again, the cards that they're kind of, the GK104 cards that they're based on, they're not exactly cheap either. The GTX 680s, they are all around the kind of 400, 450, even up to around the 500 and above pound mark each. So if you're wanting to kind of talk about, you know, the amount of performance that you get in per pound, you would expect the GTX 690 to be double, if not a little bit more, when you consider it, really, considering that you are getting 2 on 1. You wouldn't want, you know, a 680, sorry, to be 350 quid, and sorry, you wouldn't want a GTX 60 to be 450 quid, and then you get exactly the same performance if you put 2 on the same card, and then you sell the bigger, you know, like the bigger card with 2 on it for 800, because people would be like, well, I just, you know, if I'm going to get 2, I don't need 2, I just buy the 690. So the dual cards always kind of tend to be a little bit more expensive than, you know, 2 individual cards anyway. Talking about, you know, 1 card versus 2 cards and all that kind of thing. Generally, before, with the way cards went, so we'll talk about like 580s and 590s. The 590 was never as good as 580 SLI. But Nvidia have been making a lot of progress recently, and when they moved on to the 600 series, the jump that they did with performance wasn't massive. Not as much as we were expecting anyway. Now, we do kind of know what they've done, you know, behind the scenes, but I'll let you know why things are a little bit different with the way we are at the moment, because they've managed to basically get the efficiency of these cards down, so they're using a lot less power than they were before. The performance, you know, from the 580 to the 580 wasn't that much of a step. But because we kind of know that the cards, they kind of stepped the names down a little bit. So we've got much lower down the end, the range where we thought we were going to be. So the cards are much more efficient. But also with that, where we're still getting round about the same sort of performance, maybe kind of like, you know, 15, 20% more in some cases than like the 580 moving on to the 680. What we've also got when we move on to the 690, the 680, I've dropped my remote, the 680 was much more efficient than the 580. So when we move on, the 680 was, you know, brilliant. It was like a full rig that when I was running at like, it wasn't really touching 400 watts. It was crazy. And I don't mean the card, I mean the whole rig. It was nuts. So when you're then trying to put two GPUs onto one PCB, you're in a much better place, because the 590 was held back because they couldn't put enough power in it, basically. You're at the limits of the PCI Express, the actual kind of like what could come up through the motherboard anyway. And it was all about powering. You had the 2 8-pins that were running at their absolute limits, and the 590, there was no kind of headroom for overclocking there really at all. They weren't warm, they got the cooler and everything sorted out really well. But, you know, the performance-wise, they weren't great. They had to kind of taper the performance off so that, you know, they kept within the heat and they could get the power in and all that kind of stuff, rather than adding, you know, so many more connections on. Because generally with the OEM cards, that I think for some reason I think they're a lot stricter with the power connections and stuff that they can put on them. It's only really the limited edition A/B cards, we know, when it goes out to a vendor, that's when they start kind of tweaking it and adding loads of extra ones on when they do the overclock versions. But with the 690, because they were already working with chips that were so power efficient anyway, with these, yeah, okay, we've got 2 8-pins on there, but they're not being held back at all. These are so close to a pair of 680s, it's unreal. The closest a dual card has ever been to two of the to two individual cards from the next notch down. So whether we're talking about like the 6990 and the 6970s, or 590s and 580s, we've not really got a dual card from AMD for the like the big 7000 series yet. But it's because the 680 and the 7970s are so close. The 690 is literally just a smidge below those two, because the 680s in SLI and the 7970s in Crossfire are very, very, very similar. As we've done with the reviews before, there's not a lot between them. Nvidia have ramped that 680 in right at the exact same point as the AMD cards. And this literally sits just below them. If there was such a thing as a GTX695 SLI, that's where these come in. Some of the benchmarks I showed you earlier were a bit skew-if, and it's some weird kind of like, I don't know whether it's driver problems or the benchmark needs to be updated or something. But when you actually get into the games, as you'll see if you go to the link below, that's the important thing, go and have a look at the link below, you'll see that it's always kind of, you know, pretty much on par, maybe just a tiny little bit below the SLI and Crossfire of the dual card versions. It's actually really, really good in that respect. Another thing that you have to think about really is temperatures. We left it on auto the whole time. I don't think it ever got to 60% fan, but it's always really, really quiet. And we've got some really warm temperatures in the UK at the time I'm testing this at the moment. It's like 26 degrees in the room at the moment. So it not only keeps the cards pretty cool, because we were seeing around the kind of an average kind of 70 degrees, which again is brilliant when you're considering that we've got two graphics cards on one, or graphics cores on one PCB. It's really good. It's bloody good. Yes, you are going to get the second one dumping heat inside the case, but as long as you've got a decent case, you're really not going to get a problem with that. If you had a H100 putting air, you know, warm air into your case, so cold air outside coming into your H100 and coming in, that would make a bigger impact on everything else in your rig than you would do from having your graphics card dumping the heat in. When I've tested that in the past, CPU heat coming in is more than likely going to increase your GPU temperatures by about 5 degrees. Doing it this way, and the heat going up through your case and maybe through a H100, it doesn't really make a massive amount of difference at all. Bit of a strange one there, but try it. You'll see what I mean. Flick the fans around. So yeah, so it's brilliant. And let's face it, this thing looks the absolute gonads. It's probably the prettiest graphics card I've ever seen. And let's face it, all the limited edition ones I've seen, played with, had here, had in my hands, used, put in rigs, all that kind of stuff. I would probably say, and I think it's the windows and the fact that this all looks like it's metal, but I would probably go as far as say that is the prettiest graphics card I've ever seen. I'd love to take it apart and just paint it. I really would. It does a lot for me, this thing. Basically, it's obviously an immense amount of money. It's not going to be something for the average user, or that, you know, many people are going to see it as a viable kind of like upgrade option and stuff like that. This is going to be for the hardcore enthusiast, or with people that are either spending mummy and daddy's money or just have got a huge credit card and just want to max it out. But if you were to use it, it is brilliant. You just need to kind of like do things properly. As you'll see, I've done an SLI video as well, so go and look it up, because there's a lot you should look at there. If you're thinking about buying 2 of these, you need to watch that video and think carefully. But as a single card, without a second thought in my mind, it deserves the OC3D Performance Award. The only place where it falls down is, let's face it, is going to be the price. And we can't avoid the price. Yes, you do get the performance that you've paid for, but it's still going to sting no matter how much money that you're earning. But the performance is there, so we will give it the Performance Award. But for now at least, this is Tiny Tom Logan with the EVGA GTX690 OC3D Performance Award winner. These endings are getting absolutely mental, but anyway, out. I was pressing the menu button again. Why do I keep doing that? The remote ends up the wrong way bloody round.